Ever feel like you're doing this teaching thing alone? You don't have to be. Shared teaching is all about sharing the workload through the power of collaboration and teamwork. Together, we'll walk through all the difficult parts of teaching and learn how to streamline our processes, fine-tune our time management, and develop a more manageable workload. If that sounds like a dream come true to you, then welcome to the Shared Teaching Podcast. Let's share in the teaching to make those dreams a reality. Now here's today's Shared Teaching. Our special guest today is no stranger to teaching. She's been a passionate educator for 25 years, with most of her classroom experience in the 1st through 3rd grade. She currently teaches 2nd and 3rd grade in a district that she's been in for 17 years. She is very passionate about solving problems for teachers surrounding the topic of classroom community, which includes classroom management structures, connections, and engagement. Please welcome our guest, Angel Honts of Learn and Teach by the Beach. Welcome to the Share Teaching Podcast. I'm here today with a very special guest, Angel. Angel, could you go ahead and introduce yourselves to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Angel Honts, and I live on the Oregon coast. I've been in education for over 25 years, and my passion is helping teachers develop a positive classroom culture through classroom management and organizational structures and engaging activities. So thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So today you wanted to talk about classroom management, which is always a big thing all throughout the year. And this episode is going to hit around the holidays. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about different management styles around that time of year. But also just in general, I know the biggest thing this year that I've heard all across different Facebook groups is that the kids won't stop talking. So that's our big thing today. So how are we going to get kids just to listen to us?
Well, the biggest strategy that I utilize is teaching them exactly what you want them to do. What does it look like when for example, when the teacher asks for their attention, and you have to specifically teach them, well, their bodies are still, or their bodies look this way, or their hands look this way. They put their pencils down, like exactly what you want them to do when you're asking for them to listen to you. And you lay it out as specifically as you can, and then you practice. And then if they're not doing it every single time, you continue to practice. And you wait for everybody to follow your expectations, whatever they are. And when you're waiting for everybody, you have high expectations, because you want everybody to follow those expectations, but you have high support. You just keep practicing. There's no punishment. There's just, let's keep practicing. Let's keep practicing. And you might do practice like each table practice one at a time. And you might ask other tables to observe what did they do well when you ask them to follow the expectations. So you just practice and kind of get creative with your practicing. And just, if you need to stop in the middle of a lesson and practice, then do that, because if they're not listening and paying attention, it's going to be really hard to teach them. So
very true.
Explicit expectations and lots of practice is the key.
Right. And I'm with you on there. You have to really just not only tell them what your expectations are, but modeling it too. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, for sure. And have the kids model, like, this is the way you should look, and this is the way your pencil should be. This is the way your body should look. If you're moving across the room, this is the way, this is what you should do. Just be very specific and try to model in every situation. Like, if you're getting their attention and they're on the carpet, what does that look like? If you're getting their attention and they're at their desks, if you're getting their attention in the hallway, wherever they are, kind of what does that look like in each situation?
And what would you say is a pretty common downfall that you see a lot of teachers make in this area?
One of the biggest I see is starting to talk before everybody is listening. So you ask for their attention, whatever signal you use, whether it's a callback, a clapping response, lights out, whatever it is, you ask for their attention. You have expectations, but there are a handful of kids that are still talking or still working or whatever, and you start to talk. Well, that tells those kids that it's okay to start talking, it's okay to keep talking even when she's talking, when the teacher is talking. So you wait. I would say that one of the biggest, pitfalls is not waiting for everybody to follow your expectations. So whatever they are, you look around the room and you wait. And they'll figure it out pretty soon. Like, she's going to wait till everybody is following the expectations. I'm not going to get away with talking over here. I'm going to wait. And then again, if you need to practice or make it quicker, like, oh, boys and girls, that took us, 8 minutes or whatever. Let's see if we can get it down to 5 minutes between the time I ask for your attention and everybody's ready. So you can kind of practice that, kind of shortening that time up so that you're not spending so much time waiting. So again, it goes back to high expectations. Everybody follows the expectations. And then if you need to call a few students in to practice at another time, maybe maybe they just need extra practice for whatever reason, then you do that. But I think the biggest, to answer your question, the biggest, pitfall would be to not wait for everybody to follow the expectation and just start talking and when everybody's not ready.
Right. I agree with that. I do see a lot of teachers that they want to rush through things and they want to just get through it. Like, okay, I have so much to learn and so much to teach you that they kind of, just start, okay.
Yeah.
So how long do you typically give your students for this, I want to call it a training period?
Like at the beginning of the year, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, if you're just these things are not working, let me just start something new and you're going to redo your expectations. How long do you think a typical teacher needs to practice these things? Because sometimes I think we think oh, I told you once and you should be good.
Well, these are students. I mean, my background is in elementary, so I'm speaking from that perspective. I've taught kindergarten through third grade. So in that age range, I would say at the beginning of the year, I spend a good 6 weeks and we practice every single day. Again, going back to practicing in every scenario in the hallway, on the carpet, at your seat, all of those scenarios. And we practice multiple times a day, because if you are consistent and you wait for everybody to follow the expectations, students are going to realize, well, this is her expectation. She's not going to waver. This is what it is, and this is what I need to do. And so if you are consistent, I think that kind of piggybacks on your last question, being consistent every single time. And it is hard. We're in a rush. We have a lot to do. We have a lot to teach, but you can't teach them if they're not listening and paying attention. So being consistent every time and practicing a lot at the beginning, and then taking time after a long weekend, a vacation, spring break, winter break, whatever it might be, taking time on that very next day that they come back to school, say, okay, we're going to practice. Or maybe it doesn't have to be everything. Maybe it's just certain areas they need practice in, but taking that time, don't rush right in right away. Make sure that they remember, oh, what's the expectation for getting to our desks or listening or whatever it might be. So just taking that time to practice whenever. But to answer your question, I would say a good 6 weeks at the beginning of the year. And then after every break, even after a normal weekend, sometimes kids need just that quick review on a Monday morning, but especially after a long break.
And you can kind of gauge your students too. I feel like if you start noticing a lot more off-task behaviors, that's a really good signal. Hey, I think we need to go over this again.
And put it, especially when you're even in, the beginning of the year, you could have your students model, oh, what are our expectations? Oh, Johnny, why don't you read the expectations? Because then the kids, take that ownership of the expectations, and then they read it and they practice. So give them the opportunities to lead the class in practicing the expectations. So it's not always coming from you. So.
Right. And how do you feel about rewards for the students? I've seen this a lot too, quiet critters or jar of marbles, or, how do you feel about those kind of rewards, and then maybe a tangible thing if they're following their expectations?
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed opinions about this. So I don't want to add anything extra necessarily, just because we do have so much to do. The only thing that I do currently is that I have my kids at tables. And so we have table points, and I'm very clear, how your table earns points. So for example, I ring the chime that tells them it's time to clean up. And when your table looks like this, whatever the expectation is for cleanup, then your table would earn some points. Maybe at the end of the month, the table with the most points might get, something small, a pencil, a fun eraser, a fun highlighter, whatever. So that, but that's also for the speed, for example, in my example for cleaning up, that we want it to be quick and we want it to look just like this. I don't do any of the quiet critters. I don't do clip charts. I don't do any of that kind of stuff, because the expectation is the expectation, and you're at school to follow the expectation. And we practice, and we talk about it. We talk about why it's important. Why should we follow these expectations? Why do we need to listen and be respectful and responsible when we're at school? And school is your job. And we talk all about that. So to add in, for me personally, this is my opinion, I don't add in all those quiet critters. It's just, for me, it's just another something I have to manage. And we all know we have enough to do. So, I mean, if people want to do it, that's fine. But for me, I don't. So I just want them to, we try to do other fun, engaging things that don't involve that kind of thing. So
I'm with you. And sometimes I just don't think about it until some kid asks me, like,
right.
Oh, what about stickers or something? I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. And then it inevitably doesn't happen either. But yeah, those are your expectations and they should be followed. In real life, I'm not going to get like a gold star for stopping at the stop sign all the way or
right.
Being on the right side of the road.
Right. I do have smelly stickers and smelly markers that kids love. So I'll use those. I mean, well, something that I have anyway. So, little things like that. But it's just, this is, school is your job. And we do have fun. We do lots of fun things, but we want to make sure that this is what we're supposed to do. So.
Right. I like that because then it takes the pressure off of teachers that are listening. Like, you do not have to do what your neighbor does. I say that a lot on the podcast. And just, stay in your own lane and do what feels right for you. So if it feels right to you to reward your class, then go for it. And if it doesn't feel right, then no shame over here. I think we're both in the same
if you want to do it.
But
I have done certain things, but I think, you have to, again, it also depends on your class. Some classes can handle things like that and some can't. So I think it really, I think it depends on the class, or it might be if it's close to a holiday or close to a break, you might bring it out and just use it for a little while. Like it's not something, it's a special thing. So I have done that when it's the week before Christmas break or the week before spring break. I have done, okay, for this week only, we're going to do this special thing just to kind of help. The expectations haven't changed, but it's something a little bit special to get us through until we go on a break. So, so I have done those kinds of things, but then it's a little special and it kind of brings up that expectation, the consistency of everybody too. So.
Right. Because those time of like holiday parties and stuff, those are definitely the more difficult times for students to like sit still and follow what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
So a new little incentive never hurt anybody.
Yeah, I know something. And it's fun. It's like, oh, great. And then if we do it before, say, winter break, then maybe before spring break, they might remember. It might be a little different, but it might be, oh, okay, remember we did this before. Now we'll do it again, something similar to kind of get us through until we get to that break. So.
Right. So let's talk about building classroom community, because I think that is at the heart of how your classroom will run smoothly, is just having that buy-in and that community. So what are some strategies that we can do to help build it on a daily basis?
It kind of goes back to your other question about how long do you take to build the expectations? Well, I start from day one for classroom community, and we do something every single day. I have a morning meeting every day. You could have a class meeting. It could be in the morning or the afternoon. But I have one every single day. And that in that morning meeting, we greet each other. We have a sharing prompt. So sometimes it's just, how was your weekend? Sometimes it's something more specific, but I give every child a chance to share. And I greet the kids at the door every single day, whatever greeting is comfortable for them. And I know that's been very popular. I know it's been around, but it's just a good thing to do. And then, so we have our morning meeting every day. We have our greeting at the door, and we have the table groups, like I mentioned before. I move those around so I move the kids around in different table groups so they get to know each other and get to working with different groups of kids. But we talk about what a community is, and we have some traditions, things that like only our class does that other classes don't. So it kind of makes us special. We have a certain song we sing every day. We have different traditions. I have a poem when we line up to go out the classroom door. I have a poem that we say. And they say the poem. It actually changes every month. And then at the end of the poem, the expectation is that we're ready to go. And that's something that no other class does. They may do other things, but that's something that our class does. So it's those traditions that are specific for your class that help you, like, oh, this is part of our class. And I think just getting to know kids, talking with them, On Fridays, I have a lunch bunch, which I choose 4 or 5 kids to come and have lunch in the classroom with me. They usually eat in the cafeteria, and this is a very coveted thing. And I try to rotate through the kids so everybody gets a chance to do it several times. And they just come and we just talk and they eat, and it's quieter, and they can just talk about anything, and I kind of get to know them. And they get to know me. They're always fascinated by what I have to eat. It's just fascinating. The teachers eat lunch too. It's just things like that, different strategies. I would say any kind of a classroom meeting, I do it consistently, but we might have an extra one if we're having some issues with something specific. We might just add it in, like, oh, I noticed we're having some problems with tattling, for example. Let's talk about that. But the classroom meeting happens no matter what, and it follows the same structure every day. I actually have slides. The kids actually lead it. So they could do it even if I'm not there, if I'm gone for a day or something, they know exactly how to do it. And that structure and that consistency and that opportunity to share, I feel like it really helps, the kids to bond together. At the beginning of the year, not all kids share every day anyway, but it gives them that opportunity. So, and I think that's huge. And just really putting those connections as a priority every single day. And if we're, if the classroom's having a rough time with something socially, kind of stopping and let's address it right now. And even if we have to stop our math lesson, because you're not going to get them to learn, multiplication or addition and subtraction if they're having this struggle socially, whatever it might be. So.
Right. That's very important to notice. So do you have any effective strategies for having smooth transitions between activities?
Well, it goes back to just teaching them your expectation. Like, when you tell students to line up, what does that look like? That looks like standing up. That looks like pushing in your chair. That looks like walking to get in line. In my class, we have a line order, so they're always in the same order in their line, so there's no arguing. That's just something that I do. But you teach them, this is where you should stand. This is how you should stand. This is how you should look when we're leaving. I mean, it's very, very specific. And you would do this in that 6 weeks at the beginning of the year, but obviously you could review it any time. But we talk about, what does the transition look like? Well, first of all, what is a transition? There's a word that they might not know. You teach them what that is. That's moving from one activity to another. For math time, I do math centers, and I have a bell. And one bell means that they're cleaning up and then they're sitting quietly, getting ready to move. They're not moving to their next center. They're just cleaning up, sitting quietly. And when I look out and see everybody is following that, then I hit the bell twice. It's just like a little hotel bell. That's all it is. And I hit it twice, and then they get up and then they move to the next center. And so they know that routine. That's exactly what it means. And we've gone over what the one bell means. What does 2 bells mean? What should you be doing? What should it look like? What does cleanup look like? All those specifics. And I think it sounds like, you're really getting down into those details, but that's what kids need. And if you have it posted somewhere, visual, an anchor chart, then you can always refer back. Oh, here's what one bell means. Remember, this is what it should look like, so that you can refer to it as well. And then if you're not there, if you're gone and there's a substitute, then of course it's easy for kids to refer to. So just going back to your question about transitions, having very clear expectations, practicing expectations anytime you need to, but just making it very clear and being very consistent every time. It should look like this. And then if you have other adults in there to help you, you can obviously teach them as well and what it should look like, so they know how to reinforce that with the kids.
I like the idea of having some kind of signal too. And again, I think that goes back to like where you were talking about, like, this is special towards our class. So you could have some kind of special saying, or even, like you said, the bell, but just something that kind of is like, this is for our class and this is what we do in here.
Right.
So do you have any other classroom management things that you want to make sure that we talk about today that maybe we haven't covered yet? Because I know that's such a big topic. But is there something that really you need to talk about?
Well, I think just the biggest things are being explicit, having lots of practice, and just make sure that, again, that everybody is following through. One of the other things that I really am specific about is getting the kids' attention. Now, teachers can do this in lots of different ways. I use callbacks or call and response, and I have those for every month. They kind of change a little bit each month, what I say and what the students say, but the expectations don't change. So for different months, I would say something, and then they say the other half of it. And then, for example, when the kids are talking with their partner, I say Tootsie Roll Lollipop, and they say, we were talking, now we stop. And that's something I use. And then we have gone over, what does that mean? What do the expectations mean? So even if I change those words, they know the expectations for stopping to talk, it means the same thing every time. So I think, kind of going back to your question about classroom management, having clear signals, what are they? What do they mean? What is the expectation for this signal? Is it a cleanup signal? Is it, are we just stopping for the middle of the lesson? Are we getting ready to go home? Whatever the signal is, making sure that's clear. And just letting students know that this is the expectations and being consistent. And sometimes that's really hard because we're all have got lots of things to teach, and we are, always busy trying to get the next thing in, trying to get something else done. But being very consistent and explicit with our expectations is really, really important. And that would go for any kind of expectation that you have. And I would also say, have the students help with any expectations, like I mentioned before, leading the morning meeting, or pointing out, having them observe each other, say, oh, how did that go? How did that transition go? Having them reflect on the transition. Oh, look, this went really well. Oh, this needs some more practice. And they'll tell you, they know, and then they can practice, and maybe they could even lead the practice, so kind of those things are just, really important. And then, like I said, the community is like the foundation. That is you have to have that community, and then you're going to build those other things on top of it to be successful. So
while you were talking, that brought up something that I wanted to talk about earlier, is you always have that one student that we can all picture that just can't get with the program, let's say. So I know you said, pulling some kids aside maybe and doing like a special session with just them. But what if you just can't get them on board, or maybe they're just unable for whatever reason? Maybe they have a disability. How do you approach that with your other students so it doesn't look like maybe there's favoritism or a different set of rules for those students that just can't seem to do what you want them to do?
Well, again, it goes back to the student, like what their, struggles are. One of the things at our school, I would sit down with the student and say, hey, I've noticed this. What do you think? And if it's a student that can really have a conversation with you about it and say, hey, how can we help you follow the expectations? For example, I have a student this year who just blurts out all the time. So one of the strategies I've been trying with him is I give him just a little file folder, and on the left side, it just says during instruction, you have three choices. You can raise your hand, you can write down whatever instead of blurting, you can write down on this piece of paper that I've given you, or you can just sit quietly. So he's learning to make the choice. Is he successful at 100% of the time? Not yet, but I'm giving him kind of a special strategy. He still has to raise his hand like everybody else. He still has to sit quiet like everybody else, but he also has that opportunity to write things down, to share if it's something he wants to tell me or tell somebody else across the room, because that's kind of what he does. He wants to talk to somebody across the room in the middle of instruction. So I give him that. I said, when appropriate time, you can get that paper and you can take it over to your friend when we're done. So again, is he perfect at it right now? No, but it's kind of just adding another layer of expectation. Like, you still have the same expectations as everybody else, but giving him that other little piece of taking, instead of blurting out something, he's going to write it down. So to answer your question, try other strategies, ask other staff at your school, a counselor, another teacher that maybe worked with him before. Obviously, reach out to the family if that's an option, what works at home, or have communication with the family. Sometimes it's just as little as a quick email saying, oh, he did great today. This is what he did really well. Again, if that's an option for family, you might have some structures in your school set up for behavior. If you have, PBIS or whatever structure you have at your school for behavior, there might be some things in there to utilize, but, talk to the other staff at your school. But just having that conversation with the student, saying, hey, I really noticed this is where you have a challenge. What can we do? Sometimes they have ideas, sometimes they don't. But at least having that conversation with them shows them that you see them, number one, which is really what kids want to know, that you see them and you hear them. Because a lot of times those blurts or interruptions, which is a real common problem, is they just want to be seen. They just want to be heard. They just want to know that somebody cares about them. And you just have to talk about when it's appropriate and when it's not, and what you can do. But I would say start with the student, utilize the family, utilize other staff members at your school.
So maybe starting with community and then moving on to the expectations would be a good starting place for people that are I don't know what's going on with my class right now.
Yeah. going back to those, like, what are the expectations? How can let's practice some more. Maybe we just need some more practice, and to be consistent, for them to be consistent and you to be consistent as the teacher every time. These are the expectations.
And speaking of expectations, I heard you have a very special offer for free, which is one of my favorite words, especially when we're teaching about classroom expectations.
Yes, I have. It's to get onto my email list, which I consistently write my email list every week with all kinds of other freebies and any kind of strategies for engagement and organization, and of course, classroom management. It is a planning guide to help you plan out your classroom management. It's got some examples. It's got a list of some expectations to start really going through, and it's got step-by-step instructions on how to plan out your expectations. And it's also got some other resources that you can look into purchase at my TPT store. But the actual freebie is a classroom management planning guide. It does get you onto my email list, which again, you'll hear from me every week. And it's one of my most popular downloads that really I've had people say it's really been very helpful for them to sit through and think through their expectations. So it'll be available in the links. Is that correct?
Yes. So everything will be in the show notes. And I'm very excited about this as well, because I think sometimes we have so many other things going on that it's easy to forget something, especially when it's coming to like setting up our classroom or thinking through the expectations. So that's amazing. Sounds like there's almost like a little checklist in there.
Yes. And then just some examples of the things that I do. And then my contact information is there as well, so that if you have questions or need more information, I'd be glad to help you.
Perfect. And people can also reach out to you. So can you tell my audience, how can they find you if they really want to know more information, or they do want to maybe reach out to you without having to download the guide and find it in there? They can just look at the show notes.
Yes. Well, I am on Instagram. I'm a beach teacher mom on Instagram. And I also have a website. It's learnandteachbythebeach.com. So that's where I have a lot of my blog posts that address a lot of these issues. So, and learnandteachbythebeach@gmail.com is a way to get a hold of me by email if you have a specific question.
Angel, I loved our conversation today. I think you brought up some very valid ideas and a few new takes on things that I haven't quite heard yet for classroom management. So I'm excited to hear what our listeners also think. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I could talk about this all day. This is just my passion.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Great. Thank you so much.
If you've loved this show, then join me in sharing the teaching,
hitting that subscribe button,
and leaving us a review on
iTunes,
so we can be found by more teachers like you who are ready to start sharing the workload. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Find new episodes each week on sharedteaching.com. Thanks for listening to the Shared Teaching Podcast. I don't want to say mistake, but like a